everybody. Welcome to the Uncensored Anime Podcast. My name is David. We have Kenny, and we have Jerry, and we have a special, very special guest with us this week, Mikey Sinet, the youngest brother of the Sinet clan.
That's me.
Today's episode, we're going to be talking about Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, specifically parts 1 and 2, Phantom Blood, and what was the second one?
Battle Tendency.
Battle Tendency. Everyone remembered it but me. What are you going to do? And we're also going to be giving a little bit of a history lesson on Shonen Jump and the impact that JoJo's has had on that series and that magazine as well. So, Jerry.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. So, yes, welcome. It is our first episode with a guest. We have a guest star. Our first feature. We wanted to bring on the littlest Stinnett to come talk about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He has been recently watching it for the first time, and we thought it was the perfect opportunity to get Mikey on to come talk JoJo's. So, Mikey, tell us what's up. If you didn't know, on our first episode, we all told the world what our top 3 favorite animes were. So you got to tell us what your 3 favorite anime are, and I don't even know if there's 3 that you know. I don't know if Mikey has 3 animes he likes.
Dragon Ball Z,
Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT. No, but no, Mikey, tell us who you are. Tell us what's up.
I lost connection.
What do you mean?
No,
I lost connection for a minute, but we're back.
Okay.
I'm back. So I'm gonna. We're still doing introductions, or did I lose connection for too long?
No. You came back right as I gave a very lengthy intro of who you are, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as everyone knows, I'm a highbrow. They spend a lot of money to bring me on. You know, these guys really they dug deep in the bag. They got their other brother. They got more of their brothers.
Yeah, we added one more brother in.
This is gonna be the hardest pull of the whole season. This is all we spent it all on Mikey. Dude.
It was hard to get you on the
Yeah. I'm a busy man. I really am. And okay, so a favorite anime, top 3s. So we'll start with number 3. Number 3, probably. I'll do Samurai Champloo. You know, Samurai Champloo. That's a good one. I like that guy. I like that one a lot. Yeah, number 2 has got to be. Y'all ever heard of probably Rick and Morty? Number 2 is Rick and Morty.
Yeah, dude, he scaled the scale. The power level jumped real high from 3 to 8.
Yeah. Third one. Yeah, first one, you already know, Corey in the House. Corey in the House is my favorite anime of all time.
Raise the roof. Corey in the House.
I mean, Samurai Champloo. Actually, we can cut that one off there. Honestly, my number 3 is probably like The Bachelor. That's The Bachelor is my favorite anime.
Yeah, the crossover season, the one where they're in paradise, dude. That's a big deal.
Bruh, I mean, those are filler, dude.
That's honestly my favorite.
Oh, that's filler. Oh, David's
that's why it's my favorite, because I love filler.
David's being honest.
But number 0's got to be Vampire Night. Remember, everybody, Vampire Night.
No,
Mikey, you like Vampire Night, right?
I've never heard of Vampire Night in my entire life.
Oh, you're missing out, man. You're missing. We could talk about it later. It's okay.
Don't worry. Y'all can talk about Vampire Night later.
Debrief it some other time. You know?
Probably a real talk though. My favorite anime in no real order is Mob Psycho. Samurai Champloo, really.
For real.
I mean, Naruto or Dragon Ball Z, like just one of the ones.
Yeah, they're interchangeable.
One of the ones that they be fighting.
They're the same show, I think.
Mm-hmm. They be fighting.
Shonen ones. I think
Naruto Ball Z, dude. Okay, no, that's a
or
great
I mean, My Hero Academia is also like the same place in my heart. I guess they be boxing.
And Mikey, we're probably going to do a My Hero Academia. We haven't done a My Hero talk yet on the podcast, so that's probably coming up in the future. So
My
we know how
shirt
much
is
the
Dragon Ball
fans
Z.
love My Hero.
This
Mikey's
chapter,
got
yeah.
the easy
anybody out there who reads the manga, this chapter this week was fucking lit.
It was lit.
Oh,
Lit.
What week? You gotta tell them what week. You don't know. You don't know what.
Oh yeah, they don't know what
year?
week you're recording.
Wait.
The
Don't worry,
name-
I got you.
The name of the chapter, I believe, was titled 75.
75.
That's
got you,
all.
I got
That's all I'll say.
David's got you. He's taking a long time to look at the date.
Hold on.
Yeah, for the week of September 7th.
Yes.
Yeah, chapter 283.
Oh, David was. Oh, that's what he was trying to find. I was like,
Yeah.
well, I think that Mikey brings some great stuff to the table. So, like, for those listening that don't know what Samurai Champloo is, do it upon yourself. Do yourself some justice. Go watch that show. Mikey has every right to put that in his top 3. A very, very important show from the last generation. And
It was in my top 3 as well.
the company. Yeah, if you remember, Kenny brought it up during our first episode, actually. And then, obviously, Mob Psycho is another one. It's newer, but definitely deserves a place. A lot of people have started to see how good it is and how much better it is than One Punch Man, right? Which is the other show by the same guy. Like, Mob Psycho is literally like the superior show, and like nobody puts respect on its name. But beside the point, Mikey, we're so excited to have you to come join us and talk anime. We know that it's really your second. It's like you've been surrounded by it your whole life, and now we're forcing you to talk about it for 2 hours. And it's like it's kind of like torture, is what I've heard. Actually, yeah, this is.
I think that's therapy. It's like you're surrounded by your abusive parents, and you talk about it for 2 hours, and then
Whoa.
That's how you feel better.
yeah.
Oh my god! But yes, tonight we are dedicating an entire recording to the series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. We have to give ourselves some time and space to talk about JoJo's. Hell, we might even do a part 2, maybe even a part 3 to this podcast, because JoJo's is such a lengthy and elevated series. It's something that really deserves our time to talk about it. And we're only covering part 1 and 2 tonight. We're gonna dip our toes in part 3, since David and Mikey have both seen a portion of part 3, but we're not gonna go much past that. So this is really the entry level JoJo's podcast, right? This is the time for you to just listen, take in what is JoJo's, why should I be watching it, why is it an important like milestone as an anime, why is it important to the anime genre, to the shonen genre. So we want to start it off, and we want to give you guys a little background, because I think that there's 2 camps when it comes to JoJo's. You're either a super fan because you've seen it all and you love JoJo's, or you don't give a rip about JoJo's. You've maybe seen it in passing, but you honestly don't care about it and you don't want to be a part of it, right? I think that's kind of your 2 sides of that coin. Very few people sit in some place where they're like, I know what JoJo's is, I've watched a little bit of it, and I didn't like it, and I moved on. That's a pretty rare occurrence. I feel like once people jump into JoJo's and they give it a shot, they realize, oh my god, what was this guy, like, was he on mushrooms when he made, like, what was wrong with him? What drugs led Hirohiko Araki to creating JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and why is it so good? I think that's the exact, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I just feel like when you watch
Fucking
JoJo's,
art.
you just have to ask yourself, like, why the fuck did this work so well? Like, why has it persisted for so long? And why is it such a lengthy series? Because if we were to really break it down, JoJo's might be one of the longest running, based off of years. I don't know the exact number, but years wise, it might be one of the longest running manga of all time. Unfortunately, it did take some short breaks between certain parts, so it can't be the longest continuously running manga, because there were breaks between different parts of the manga, but it is an incredibly long-running manga that dates all the way back to 1987.
33 years.
And so, to put that into perspective, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is older than all of us. We are all nowhere near as old as JoJo's. And Mikey wasn't even born. There was already 5 full parts of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that were created and on the page and done before Mikey was born.
Yeah, currently what exists in anime form existed story-wise before Mikey was alive.
Yeah, like the story was already everything that Mikey can watch as an anime now, it was completed prior to Mikey's birth, and the rest of us, we are all younger than the most iconic series, which is Stardust Crusaders, which ended in 1992, and that was before any of us were born. So why in the world are us 4 taking the time to talk about a series that is from the 80s, that has been around for this long, that's older than all of us? What has made it get us to here? So I do want to lay the landscape of what was the world like when JoJo Bizarre Adventure first aired. Boys, what was going on in 1987? Do you guys have any idea?
No clue.
So
metal, rock
music
for sure.
Yeah, rock music.
REO Speedwagon.
A lot of
Led
When was
Zeppelin.
the Cold War? When did the Cold War happen?
Wasn't it like an important period for movies too? Like a lot of like iconic movies were starting to come out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because I know that Mad Max had come out recently because Kenshiro is based off of Mad Max.
Right. What do we know about Shonen Jump in 1987?
Nothing.
I got nothing.
I don't
think any of the big mangas had started coming out. I mean, when did Dragon Ball?
So let's talk about. Oh no!
Like-
Dragon Ball predates JoJo's.
Yeah, it's like early
Dragon Ball
80s,
beats
right?
JoJo's by just a little bit. So to put it in perspective for those listening, right? Weekly Shonen Jump is the most popular, unquestionably, the most popular and world-known brand of weekly shonen manga. And if you don't know what the word shonen means, it's essentially it means manga that's targeting a specific audience. Shonen is young boy, and this is a Japanese word for young boy. It means it's manga that's created or tailored for young men. So men in high school to early college age. That's sort of the target audience for a Shonen Jump manga. And there are tons of weekly shonen manga magazines that run multiple series in Japan. There are many, many of them, but the most iconic, the most well-known, the one that's most world-renowned is Weekly Shonen Jump, which is published by Shueisha. So Shueisha is a really big publishing company, and they first started doing Weekly Shonen Jump, get this, all the way back in the late 60s is when Weekly Shonen Jump first took off. But you probably couldn't name a single series from those early years. I know that for
Dr.
me...
Slump?
So Dr. Slump is a great one to name, David. And Dr. Slump did not come out until... Let's see here.
Am I wrong?
No, you're right. 1980. So almost 20 years after the magazine started is when we
did
first got
Astro
Dr.
Boy?
Slump.
Was
Astro Boy was
in
not...
it?
Nope. Astro Boy was not associated with Weekly Shonen Jump. It actually predates it by just a little bit. So,
Wow.
for those of you familiar, I'm going to name off a couple that are going to probably blow your minds. Because these, there's a couple of these that you might actually know. That I think really, really sort of established the genre. So, from the 60s and 70s, I personally don't know like any of these guys. So, like, these are seriously like some niche specific things. The earliest series that I know comes from the 1972 series Mazinger Z. And I'm sure you guys have at least heard of that. Because it was made by Go Nagai, who actually has a very modern anime that came out. Mikey, you watched it, actually.
What?
Devilman Crybaby.
Bruh.
Yeah, so my boy Go Nagai was making manga for Shonen Jump all the way back in the 70s, long before JoJo Bizarre Adventure came about. And then you've got a couple more that come around in the 70s, I believe. Let me make sure. Yeah, so that's when Kochikame started, 1976. We talked about Kochikame on a previously podcast. It ran until 2016, everyone. 2016. From 76 until 2016, Kochikame ran. It's a comedy manga about a policeman. It's very interesting. Another one that came pretty recent, or in the 70s, is Ring ni Kakaro. Came in 1977. It's the first manga by the iconic manga artist Masami Kurumada. He created Saint Seiya, which is one of my top animes of all time. Ring ni Kakaro was a boxing manga that he did in the 70s, so before Saint Seiya. And then a couple more iconic ones come around in the late 70s, and that's Cobra, which is a space adventure series, and Kinnikuman. So in the first 10 years of Weekly Shonen Jump, those are the main series that are still, I would say, prevalent. I say almost all those are known enough by modern anime fans that there is at least some fan base still around for some of these shows. Kinnikuman, especially, if you don't know what Kinnikuman is, it's about wrestlers. It's like space wrestlers. Mikey, Kenny, I know you guys know Kinnikuman because I used to love it as a kid. Hey, David, do you know what Kinnikuman is?
Do they have any reference in Jump Ultimate Stars?
They do. Yes. Yeah, they've got a character. You can play.
Then I'm sure I've seen him. Yeah.
Yeah. But you probably know it better as a TV show that aired in America in the 2000s called Ultimate Muscle. Do you remember this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, That's what I think just about anyone who grew up in the early 2000s probably at least knows Ultimate Muscle. It was actually more popular in America than in Japan. So then you start to get into the 80s, which is when manga really starts to take off. And it starts to kind of develop, especially in the weekly shonen genre, thanks to one manga series. It starts to go in this direction where the characters are sort of like these power fantasy types of shows, right?
These He-Man looking motherfuckers.
Where you go from things like Kochikame, where characters are more comical. There's a little bit more of that along the line. Or Ring ni Kakuro, which the characters are still drawn very slenderly, very anime-esque. And now all of a sudden they start to get He-Man-esque, right? And if you know this, He-Man came out in the 80s as well. There was sort of this fad for these big, beefy characters. And you get the first series that... I think Kinnikuman kind of predates this series a little bit. Because Kinnikuman also drew characters kind of like this. But all of a sudden in 1983, you get Fist of the North Star. And I think unquestionably, JoJo's couldn't exist without Fist of the North Star. Jojo Bizarre Adventure, it exists because... it exists in a a post Fist of the North Star world, because Fist of the North Star set the precedent of that you could write this series, you could write a manga series that was incredibly like ham-fisted, goofy, fun, but was also just filled with these massive guys that were just punching each other, and it developed some identity from that. And Hirohiko Araki actually put out his first series, Bayo, in 1984, which was just a year after Fist of the North Star, but that manga was very quickly canceled, so it didn't really work out for Araki. That series didn't really work. It does have some sort of a cult following to this day. Bayo does. I think it's pronounced Bayo. It might be Bao. And then 1984 you have Dragon Ball. So Fist of the North Star and Dragon Ball lay the cloth for JoJo's to come about. And then you also get shows like Sakigake Orokojoku, which is another very popular sort of comedy manga that has that same style. And then JoJo's in the 80s, late 80s.
That's how we Jump Ultimate Stars represented.
Oh yeah, Sakigake. All those are represented in Jump Ultimate Stars if you're ever going to play it. And so, Saint Seiya comes out in there in that same range in the 80s. I think I said 70s at one point in one of our old podcasts, but no, Saint Seiya is an 80s manga, not 70s. And then you have JoJo's, right? So 1987, the first volume of JoJo's hits, and Part 1 starts, also known as Vampire Night. Part 1 is also known as
Vampire Night. Yeah. It's Vampire Night.
Right, David, Mikey?
It really is, though.
You're watching Part 1.
I love this show because there's vampires in this show. It's my new favorite show because of...
David turned on the first episode, he saw vampires, he said, wow. That tickles my fancy. That's exactly what I want. This is what I've been waiting for.
I can't get away from
Vampire Night.
Well, Mikey, we all know that
it's a forced meme.
David loves David loves Vampire Night. That's all we know, dude. We don't know what's going on. Mikey, didn't you think there was a little bit of vampire? You love the vampire lore in JoJo's, but
let's be honest. Was Dio really a vampire?
No, he was a Ripple Man, bro.
No.
What's the Ripple Man?
There's like
I don't know.
There's like ancient forces that are in the mask. I mean, he's vampire-esque. He's got like vampire.
He just couldn't stand in the day, but he could also, freeze people.
I mean, like the main thing about vampire is that they can't handle the sun and that they drain blood. So it says he does that. It's kind of like you can throw away. He's a vampire,
and they shoot laser beams out of their eyes. That's another classic vampire power. I don't know if everybody else knows that.
They drop the temperature of your blood cells to zero.
Okay, so here we are. It's the 80s. JoJo starts up. It gets going, and there's the first part, and that's the part we're going to be talking about later tonight. And then, quickly followed by part 2 and part 3. The first 3 parts, I want to say the first 5 parts are published without much break. Let me double check. Yeah, the first 5 parts run consecutively. There's no break. So the first 5 parts of JoJo's are published in one go. He does it weekly in Weekly Shonen Jump. It is a very standard series that runs in Jump and that goes from 1987 to 1999. So this obviously was a super popular manga series, right? A manga doesn't persist in Weekly Shonen Jump like that unless it is drawing a significant amount of success, it's drawing merchandise, so on and so forth. So it is a very popular manga series. And what was common in the time, this time, is that when there was a really popular Weekly Shonen Jump, they were quickly adapted into long-running anime series. Saint Seiya, Dragon Ball, Dr. Slump, all of them have Fist of the North Star. All of them have Kinnikuman even has a long-running anime series that accompanied the success of these shows. But for some reason, which I don't know if the history is well known enough, at least from my research, I don't know if there's much information out there about why JoJo's was never given a proper anime adaptation. It never got the same treatment like Kinnikuman, like Dragon Ball, but was unquestionably super popular. There was merchandise, there were video games that were made of the series back in the 80s and 90s. It's still made to this day. There were video games, there was merchandise, you could buy, the manga was selling super hot, there was all this other stuff that JoJo's was doing, but for some reason it was never getting a proper anime adaptation until 1993. And in 1993, a company by the name of APPP decides that they want to adapt. Yes, it's APPP.
How many P's?
Oh,
how many P's was that, Jerry?
Just a couple.
Back.
It's a A3P, 3 P's.
P?
A company called APPP.
I only got 1 P.
Not enough P's for me. A company named APPP decides they want to adapt JoJo's. This is in the 1993 is when we get this show. And what's crazy about this is that they make what a lot of people consider the biggest blunder of a Jojo Bizarre Adventure anime ever. And for some reason, they decide to start at the middle of Stardust Crusaders and do a 6 episode. Each episode is 37-ish minutes. Adaptation of just the ending of Stardust Crusaders. So it's just the last half of Stardust Crusaders. They adapted into an anime, and I hate to tell you guys listening and those of you, it was a complete failure. I mean, did not do well, didn't match the art style or the pacing of the manga. People were super disappointed in it, and obviously didn't catch a new audience because, who's gonna watch the back end? It just made no sense, right?
Yeah, that choice makes no sense at all.
Especially for that in particular, because the villain is set up 2 seasons prior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very weird. So that OVA, which still exists out there, you could actually go find it, those of you listening. That's a 1990s OVA. They made 6 episodes. It's very interesting. If you get the time, go check it out. It's very interesting. It's worth a little peek, a little look-see. But so they do that, and obviously doesn't work out. But Araki's unfazed. He just continues to write the manga, and the manga continues to be a big success around the world. And it's not until I want to say 2005, when he's doing Steel Ball Run, that the manga actually makes a conscious decision to leave Weekly Shonen Jump, and it jumps over to the Seinen Ultra Jump magazine that also runs under Shueisha. So Shueisha moved it over to the Seinen Ultra Jump, which publishes monthly instead of weekly. And so the formatting kind of changes up. But at this point, there was really no adaptation. I mean, Araki was just doing everything at his own pace. He was just doing what he wanted. He still had an abundance of fans. It was selling like really, really crazy. JoJo's was still a hot property, but was still not getting very much attention outside of the manga superfans. So in the early 2000s, APPP comes back. They said, we're sorry about 6 years ago. We made a mistake. We're going to adapt the first half of Stardust Crusaders. So they didn't adapt part 1 or 2, but they go back and they adapt the first half of Stardust Crusaders, guys. What were they thinking? So they adapt the first half. The style's different. They bring in a different... different director, different team. They make a whole new, and now they're using 2000s technology. So they're using the 90s one is done in the hand-drawn style that you expect from the older anime series. The 2000s prequel is done in the the more modern computer-generated sort of look that you get in modern anime. So very interesting separation. They published the prequel version, which makes no sense. It ends on a weird part. Obviously, it's the middle of the series. You have to go back and watch the old one to watch the ending. Super weird, and so that also just kind of flops. Also still available. You can go find that on the internet as well. And then you get up to one last... Before we get to the modern adaptation that we've watched today, there's one last attempt that APPP takes at adapting something from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And what they do is... Let me double down and make sure I'm saying the right stuff. What they do is they back it up, and they decide they're going to adapt. Yep, here we go. They adapt part 1. But instead of doing a show, doing a series, APPP says, okay, we're going to do it right this time. We're going to make a JoJo Bizarre Adventure part 1 movie. So they make a movie for JoJo Bizarre Adventure, Phantom Blood. They turn Phantom Blood into an anime film. and it was a complete, as far as I understand, it was a complete failure. It was pulled from theaters. It's almost impossible to find that movie on the internet. It's super hard to find. It has a very strange. I don't even think it was released on DVD. I want to say I'll have to do some research, but I want to say it like never got released on home video due to certain issues with it.
They tried to put 44 chapters in like an hour and a half.
Yep.
What the fuck?
So I decided to make this movie. The movie doesn't do well. Obviously, APPP finally flops. And for the first time ever, I believe what was happening is APPP was holding on to the animation rights for JoJo's. They most likely got some sort of deal at some point. I'm not sure of the specifics there. But at some point in time, leading into 2012, David Production gets their hands on the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure IP.
You're welcome.
And David Production, it's all David.
Well, the Phantom Blood movie looks lit, though, low key.
Honestly, I've always wanted to see it, but it's pretty hard to track down.
The art piques my fancy a little bit.
So
2007.
In 2012, when David Production sat down to make this show, they had a very, very small resume, okay? They had only adapted a couple anime series up to this point, starting in only 2009 is when the company was founded in 2007. So it's a very, very young anime company. So as you can guess, when this company got their hands on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the fans were worried. They were worried. They said, what is going to happen with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
It's a work of art.
Right?
They did such a great job.
The rest is essentially history. As of right now today, David Production has produced what I would consider a word-for-word, one of the best adaptations of a manga of all time. They have done 5 parts. As of right now, 5 of the 8 total JoJo's Bizarre Adventure parts. They've adapted it in its entirety without messing things up, without going out of order. They did it from the beginning. Episode 1 adapting Chapter 1 itself of the series from 1987. And they put that on TV in 2012. And they hoped to God that people would still like it. They crossed their fingers and they said, I hope to God that people still want to watch this weird show from the 80s.
Or, Buddha,
Or Buddha. Sorry.
God is a bit of
I was being a bit of a bit of a problem.
Dick.
But yes, they hoped that it would stick, that something would happen and this would become something important. And the rest is history. At this point in time,
it's the panel adaptation. It is so
the JoJo's adaptation has finally given that series, a series that has been a huge mainstay in shonen manga since the 80s. It has finally given that series all of the justice it deserves. No more shitty adaptations. No more waffling around. The appropriate amount of time and effort put into creating something good. And they have adapted that series for all of us to enjoy now. And that is why, because in 2012, David Production decided to do this, that is why 4 guys who were born long after this series was created are sitting around talking about it, because we have all had the pleasure of being able to finally get to enjoy it in its entirety and enjoy it. And for those of you who don't know, Kenny and I are longtime fans. We've been watching JoJo since it aired. I actually have been a fan of JoJo's since before the 2012 series. Kenny and I had watched portions of the OVA. We played with the characters in video games.
I'm about to say, Jotaro and Dio, I think, are the strongest characters in Jump Ultimate Stars.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right.
Yeah,
Dio's
so fucking.
And Mikey also obviously knew about JoJo's.
When I was little, I knew JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because I would play Jump Stars with you guys, Jump Ultimate Stars. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Jotaro went ham. Dio was broken. He would throw this tractor on top of you and cover half the screen for his ultimate. Yeah. And of course, 9-year-old Mikey was like, that guy, I need to see that guy. So when I was little, I remember I looked up the YouTube videos of the final fight from the original OVA.
The OVA.
So I've definitely seen those more than once.
Right. It's weird. It's weird. Yeah. So we were fans of the show before. Unfortunately, I don't think when we were kids we ever watched the OVA all the way through, which is weird to think about. We've definitely seen clips of it our whole lot, since I was in middle school when I first found it, guys, so you guys were even younger. So David and I were middle schoolers, and Thibodeau, I don't know if you remember, but Ian Zachary, he actually used to buy the Stardust Crusaders the volumes, like the manga volumes.
Yep.
He used to have them. So we, David and I had another friend in high school who had the manga. So long before the 2012 adaptation came around, we were all at least aware and slight fans, or at least of interest of JoJo. So when the 2012 adaptation came along, we made it a point to watch all of it. Kenny and I did. We actually watched it with Troy the first time I watched it. Troy watched the whole thing with us, David. So we had an opportunity to sit down and watch it when it first came out. I think I waited until the 2012 show was over, and then we marathoned the whole thing. The first season, so part 1 and 2. But since then, I've been watching it weekly. So, I watched part 3, 4, and 5 weekly as they came out. And I've really enjoyed it. I've made it a point to never read the manga, so I don't spoil myself. I get to enjoy the anime as it comes out. And it's crazy thinking that you can now walk inside of... You can walk in Hot Topic, and you can literally look on the walls, and they sell JoJo's Bizarre Adventure merch. I bought a... I don't know if I have it.
Technical difficulties. If this is still recording, put this in the final version. Everybody wants to rap when there's a microphone in front of their mouth. It's like
Mikey, yes, you're in there. Look at this. Yeah. So this this was been a couple months back. I
love that.
I bought this at Hot Topic. This was just an item at Hot Topic. I got it a couple months back at Hot Topic, and this is crazy.
Wait, Jerry, where'd you get it from?
It's a cultural phenomenon now.
Hot Topic. Hot Topic sponsor the Uncensored Anime Podcast. We promise. We won't do anything wrong or bad. No,
give us money.
Give us money. But it's crazy that you can walk inside of a store that's just readily available in all malls across America, and you can find things like that just in the store readily. JoJo's was never that in America, right? It was always a big deal in Japan, a big deal in other countries. It was never that here until the 2012 series, and it has reignited. It has made people fans of a show that was created, just again, to put it in perspective, this thing came out in 1987, boys. That is 33 years ago. 33 years ago.
I mean, it's a cultural phenomenon. Now, when I look through all of Reddit, Shitpost Crusaders gets that r/Shitpost Crusaders is a like a staple of Reddit now.
A staple.
I mean,
I love
it's hilarious.
I think the animation of it makes it look so modern, so you don't even think, oh, this is like an older anime or whatever. It just, the animation looks so crisp, it looks so good that you don't question it how old it is. Right. You just watch it and you're like, damn, these big ass motherfuckers are just punching people with their shadows and shit. This is dope.
Whoa!
It appeals to my male fantasy. It really does. I'm
it really do.
And
they be attacking.
It's odd to think about. Now it's seen as historical, but each of the time periods set for each series was the current time period. Part one predates. But
part 2 was set in essentially the 80s, which is when it was made.
And then part 3 was set.
Part 2's in the 40s.
Part 2's in the 30s.
Oh,
it's like during World War II.
I think that's what made.
No, it's post-war.
It's post-war, but you're right. It's a little bit before the 80s. It's not until part 3 that the timelines match up. Kidding. Part 3 is the first one in modern time. You're right.
But then they are all in modern.
It was not only modern, it was also the first one in Japan. So I bet people, readers in Japan were like, finally, it's our time period and it's got our Japanese boy.
Mm-hmm. And our main character's a high schooler. Come on.
Ooh, ladies love him.
They said, "Oh, Shonen."
I mean,
baby.
Jotaro is
he kind of.
Jotaro can get it.
He kind of scrumptious, dude. He kind of scrumptious.
Y'all sleep.
But he's 17 though, so that's a trap.
Okay, so
he's 17, but he's larger than all three of us stacked on top of each other.
Fucking giant.
He is literally
all four of us.
His fucking shoulders are like orbs. Jesus.
That's the style.
Okay, so yes, that's it. That's the context that JoJo's exists in. It's a show that was made in the era of beefy boys that was the 80s, that has somehow persisted for 33 years. It has grown to be a cultural phenomenon. It started in Japan, and it wasn't until 2012 when David Production gave us this magical masterpiece that we are here today watching and enjoying and reviewing this beautiful show. So I think that it's only right, boys, we start with Part 1, Phantom Blood. We got to give it the attention it deserves. In anime form, it is only a 10-episode part, right? So it was animated into 10 episodes, and it totals, 44 chapters of manga, I think?
It's like 4 chapters an episode.
Just sidebar, it's 1938 is part 2.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
So yes.
So pre-World War II.
Yeah.
Pre-World War.
So it's not until part 3 that it matches the time period to like modern times.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so part 1, Phantom Blood, David Production finally gave it its faithful adaptation in 2012 as the first half of the first season of the Jojo Bizarre Adventure anime series. And that's what the boys watched this week. Well, Mikey watched it a little bit ago. David watched it this week. Kenny and I both had to refresh ourselves this week to set the stage for this episode. But we have watched it a long time ago, but got ourselves prepped up. So I want to hear from Mikey first off. Mikey, give us your opinion. You got sat down and finally got to watch part 1 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure.
Right.
What was...
Should we go over the story?
So...
Oh yeah. Kenny can set... Before we get it... You're right, Kenny, sorry. Kenny, tell us
what it's about.
Tell us a very brief, what is part 1 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure about?
So part 1 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure starts with 2 families. One is Dario Brando and his son, Dio. And one is George Joestar and his son, Jonathan. And the story about how Dio Brando, after finding a ring that was given to his father through sort of scrupulous means, he finds the Joestar Manor and says, "Take me in as your son." And this man, Dio, is not a good dude. He's not an okay dude. He's kind of a piece of shit. And
he's a piece of shit.
And my boy Jonathan is the perfect, most naturally loving and caring individual. And Jonathan is an archaeologist, and he finds this stone mask. And after some time passes, they grow up and graduate college, and Jonathan finds out that this mask, if blood drops onto it, these claws come out. And it turns out, whenever that happens, if you have it on your face, you turn into a vampire, I guess. This is Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, and so Dio gets some blood on this mask, puts it on his face, turns into a vampire, and then just tons of weird shit starts happening. Guys karate chop through frogs, they smash each other through walls, heads throw roses.
Mikey, what was that part? Yeah. Oh, the with the guy's head that gets chopped off, dude.
Head throw roses with breathing energy, even though they're just heads in a flower pot.
Right. He also talks and winks and then disappears in a dust.
Yeah.
After being frozen.
Yeah. People survive after their heads are cut off. Dio, in particular, survives multiple times after. Very truly, it seems like he's dead.
His head literally gets chopped off, and he's like,
"Yep,
I'm still here."
So, I'm still here.
Mikey, we want to hear your first opinion.
Mikey, yes, we like to start the shows with a little bit of just your first. What was your feeling when you finished the part 1 of JoJo's?
Right. So I went into part 1 of JoJo's already sort of knowing what happens in part 3. Stardust Crusaders. I had definitely watched even the newest adaptation of Stardust Crusaders before. I have seen the newest last few episodes, and I've seen, but this was a long time ago. I wasn't necessarily paying attention. Maybe like Kenny had it on, and I was just like watching in the corner of my eye or whatever. And so I already understood that this show spirals into some of the most ridiculous scenes I've ever seen in my life. Like, a dog running around with a giant magical thing behind him. So I went into this knowing that, but it starts off, it's mundane. It's a little mundane. And the first episode is a little slow, but I think by the end of at least the first episode, Dio puts the dog in the oven and cooks him, and it's it's like he's an evil man, but there was like almost no motivation for it. There's no, I was very confused on why he was doing that, and what I noticed very quickly is that this show, to me, felt like almost like an ad-lib game. like he was sitting around with his friends or something, and he went, and the main protagonist was a part of what type of group? And he was like, boxing group. He's a part of a boxing group that is located by the river, and
by the river.
A fill in the blank ad lib. Like there's almost no connection for anything that goes on at all. And we trek through this. I mean, it's the Bizarre Adventure. It's a Bizarre Adventure. And another thing that really kind of upset me is that both Jonathan Joestar and Dio Brando they're buffoons. Like, imagine, okay, like the cool part about Tom and Jerry, like they hate each other, whatever, but they're like really smart animals. Mm-hmm. Imagine Tom and Jerry with really dumb humans. Like
That's a really good analogy.
There were so many opportunities for Dio Brando to kill the Jonathan's dad, take and blame it on Jonathan, and make it all seem like it was his fault. Like there was a time when he was going to go get like an antidote. Dio should have just stayed back and killed the dad, and then made it seem like natural causes took him or whatever, like suffocating.
Mikey was thinking. Mikey was 3D chessing. He was like,
no. I don't. Dio's a horror. He's super evil, but his brain, he has no IQ points.
His brain don't
he
work.
Does not understand. And then Jonathan is he just walks. He caught a blade with his hand, like, I must do the most correct, noble thing.
Yep.
For no reason, and it was frustrating to watch them both fail at being a hero and both fail at being a villain. It's like that's where they connected, is that they both were just like stupid. Like, that was season 1 was pretty ridiculous, and then
it was pretty ridiculous.
Season 1, the first like 4 episodes, it was like they're in London and they're very homely, and then like this, like after I watched Jonathan like pulverized Dio into the burning house, so he was like pushing him back in the burning house, which from the top of the burning house to the bottom where Dio landed on the like the statue of the sword was a 4.5 minute fall. Somehow they were falling 4.5 minutes. And they had conversations. They had strategy.
Bro, they had a full
inside his head. We heard what was going on inside of Dio's head.
Bro. That's fantastic.
At that point, that doesn't even kill him.
It evolved. No, it didn't, because he's Dio. Because he had the blood. He used the mask. I don't know, magical mask.
Magical mask.
What's Jim Carrey or whatever in the mask? That's what this. Yep. The show is not much different than Jim Carrey's mask.
Like said, it's like Jim Carrey's The Mask.
Then there are these 2 undead warriors that, I don't know, Baron Zeppeli showed up. He was like, actually, I can teach you magic. I'm like,
breathing magic.
The ripple, bro.
Magic. Baron Zeppeli came in looking like he was about to literally sell me cocaine on the streets of Nevada. Like, he had like a giant top hat, like a coat. Like, everything was like weirdly designed.
Right.
God.
It's so wild.
Weird show, man.
I wish I understood. Jerry earlier was like, was he on shrooms? This show feels like you were snorting cocaine while you're watching it, which definitely is harmful for your body, but does it make you high?
Yeah.
I definitely it kept attempting to outdo itself. Like, I think that like he understood. He was like, okay, Shonen Jump mangas are ridiculous by nature. They're ridiculous. There's no reason for these, metrosexual men to be fighting in space. Dragon Ball Z. There's no reason for this, penis-looking alien Frieza to be catching a giant energy beam. Mm-hmm. So Shonen Jump by nature is a little ridiculous, and it's like he wanted to see. He kept, at every turn he was like, how ridiculous and how ridiculous can it be? How ridiculous can I make this? Mm-hmm. And so every episode it turned up the bizarre meter. It just kept ticking and ticking and ticking and ticking. And from what I've watched thus far, it stays true to that. It will continue to try to make it more bizarre. Every episode it tries to be like, was that bizarre? Tell me it was bizarre.
Did we do something wacky this episode? Guess what? Tell me. Is the stand a coffee cup?
Who knows where the stand is? Who is the stand? This is before stands. It was still crazy before, long before stands.
It was. I'm about to say Jack the Ripper shows up, and then
I forgot Jack the Ripper was in
there. Jonathan punches a guy through a wall. He's like, "Oh, I just figured it out. I just send my ripple through the wall to blast." And you're like, "What?"
Figured it out.
David, oh Jesus Christ, David, this was also your first time watching.
Are we boring you?
No, Jesus Christ, no, it's just late. David, this was also your first time watching Phantom Blood.
Yes.
So what was your first take in, other than what Mikey put? Mikey laid it out. Mikey, Tom and Jerry, but they're humans. That was the best.
I mean, this cat, this cat.
If you haven't watched Phantom Blood, there it is.
But it's like
same thing.
They both suck at the game. They both can't win.
Okay, David, so again, first time watching Phantom Blood, what'd you think? What was the takeaway? What was the...
So, overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it made sense to me in the beginning, as they're, building up these, setting up these characters. Like, Dio's obviously he's the bad guy. He's been fucked over a lot in life. His dad, he hates his dad. He blames his dad on everything that he's been dealing with.
Right.
And Jonathan, Joestar is, he's living a pretty well life, but you can tell he suffers from loneliness. He doesn't really have a lot of friends. His best friend is a dog, which, rip to that dog.
Yeah, but rip to the dog. Honestly,
this guy loves to kill dogs to show that people are villains.
I think watching JoJo's, I think I've seen 4 dogs die so far.
Araki has realized the one way to anyone's heart is the one way to make you hate a villain, make the villain kill a dog, and everyone will be like, "Fuck that guy."
So I think it was episode 1. So seeing Dio, obviously going into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the only prior knowledge of this entire series that I had was Jotaro and Dio from Jump Ultimate Stars. Mm-hmm. Aside from that, I didn't know anything at all about the plot, the story, any other character. So I went into it pretty blind. And so seeing Dio, I was like, yeah, he's evil, but he looks pretty badass. Dio's design is really cool.
Very cool.
And then the second he jumps out of the car, as he's when he gets to the Joestar's mansion for the first time, he's like, "Hey, let me live with you. I'm homeless. Please help me out." He jumps out of the car all fancy and then the dog runs up to him and then he knees the dog in the face. And I was like, "Damn, fuck Dio."
Jesus Christ!
It's the perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect reason. Like you said, if you want, your audience to hate a character, just show them abusing animals.
Yeah, literally. It's the one universal thing that we all know. It's like, that guy abuses animals. I hate that guy.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And so going through the first 10 episodes, it things made sense. I was waiting for when they were going to introduce that, that mechanic that every anime has, where some kind of explanation to their supernatural powers,
right?
And then Hamon was introduced.
Instead, you got a half episode where they played college rugby, I think.
That was after the mini time skip that they.
Mm-hmm. Right. But we introduced the mechanic after the time skip.
Yeah, I think it was because it was after Dio became a vampire, was when he started discovering him, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So as we've said, Dio puts the mask on his face, he gets blood on it, he turns into a vampire, he walks up a wall sideways, and then somehow Jonathan's able to keep up with him without any like Hammond powers.
Yeah, the first fight between them is just Jonathan. Yeah,
because Dio goes from like instant like power up badass like right when he becomes a vampire. I don't know if he's like still discovering his powers or whatever, but so somehow Jonathan gets out of that, and then he runs into Baron, and then he learns Hammond.
Yep.
He forms the group, his posse, and then they go battle Dio.
Yeah, with Robert Edward O. Speedwagon.
Hey, Speedwagon though. Can we just talk about Speedwagon for a little bit? I think
a great character.
Speedwagon is like, I think it was Akari's like plot device of just like, if there's anything I need, I'll just use Speedwagon. I think he mainly uses it mostly in part 2 for like money related things.
Right, he's like, hey, well, he uses it a lot in part 3 though. The Speedwagon Foundation still funds everything.
Yeah.
They're like, so we're on a plane, a fucking car.
He lets Speedwagon be that thing that,
But
I love Speedwagon in the first part though. I think that he's one of the more endearing characters.
Yeah. He's Mikey said it earlier. He's like the perfect like announcer. He's just like in all the battles. He's just on the side, just like shouting what's happening
instead of a world tournament. The world tournament, you have a real life announcer, or whatever. Instead, Speedwagon's like, "Oh my God, he's using his hair to deflect the hormone. What will happen next?" I'm like, this guy don't got no powers. He got money, I think. I don't know. He just there.
He's just there. At that point, he's just there. He's got a scar.
He got respect, Mikey. He got respect. Damn it.
Yep.
Oh, he's literal Krillin. He's the Krillin. And then getting to the end when they battle Dio, and then they think they get the slip on him, and you think it's a happy ending. And I was not expecting, and of course, spoilers for the viewers out there. But I was not expecting Jonathan to die at the end of part 1. That really surprised me. Yeah. I was surprised when I saw Baron Zeppeli die, because I wasn't used to the
Zeppeli and Jonathan. Yeah.
Just to be clear, there, he originally did not expect to write anymore.
Yeah,
he originally wrote the first one. Yeah, he wrote the first one as if that was the end of his bizarre story, and did not expect to be picked up for more, to write more in that world. So that's why it kind of felt like that cap.
So it was originally supposed to be like that was it, like that was supposed to be all JoJo.
Yeah. I think his whole thing was like he wanted to continue to make manga, but they were like, "Hey, we only want you to make JoJo's," and he was like, "Okay, I'll just change the whole story." Like he was like, "I'm just going to do what I want to do." And I'm just going to say it's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Yeah,
it looks like he took about a month between the finale of part 1 before he came back and wrote the first chapter of part 2. So, he did take a little bit of time. It wasn't a lot, but he took a little bit of time before he started into another part.
Yeah, and I think, we'll get into part 2 later, but I think he like beautifully picked up the things that happened in part 1 and was able to have like a.
I really have to
use a closer.
Go.
Oh, get out of here. Get out of here.
Go do it, Mikey. We'll keep talking through it, dude.
Yeah.
Mikey's headed to the bathroom, boys. But yeah, keep going, David.
But no, I was just saying, I think he tied up like the loose ends of part 1 beautifully in part 2 with the baby that Irina saved, and the whole connection of part 2's plot to Dio and the mask. But speaking about part 1, I liked it. I think it was a great, a great build up to the whole JoJo's universe. I think I was impressed that the pacing didn't feel like anything was rushed. I didn't notice any weird pacing, even though it's 44 chapters and 10 episodes, which is pretty impressive.
It's essentially adapting 4 to 5 chapters an episode, which is pretty quick. To say the least, right? The reason I think that it actually works well with JoJo's is because that the manga was a pretty action-paced series, right? So, in a 19 to 20 page chapter, there was a lot of action, which can be depicted very quickly in anime form. It allows for a series like that to be adapted and still feel really nicely paced when you pace it up. Something I just read on the wiki that I thought was really interesting is that during Araki's publication of this manga, he was told by Shueisha that JoJo's was not the best of the best. That it was not in that category, that it didn't fit with Dragon Ball and Fist of the North Star.
They told him that straight up.
They told him that. And that kind of cracks me up because I think that now it is the best of the best, right? JoJo's is now potentially one of the greatest manga series to come from the 80s. And
I feel like he was making fun of Dragon Ball. I feel like he was making fun of...
No, I think no question about it. You're right. You're 100% right, Mikey. And I think that's where... I don't think he was even hiding that. With a title like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure,
right?
I think he was so on board with parodying the genre that was making shonen so popular that's exactly what he wanted to do. It's not a genuine parody because it also falls into the same tropes of those series, but it was certainly like a meta look at what those series were doing. And
it's not as put together as something like One Punch Man. It was One Punch Man is our modern, really good parody, really good satire of the genre. Mm-hmm. But I felt like this was almost starting and starting to think about parodying the whole thing and sort of an older One Punch Man-esque feel to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The one problem is that we didn't necessarily get a character that's like One Punch Man that directly tells the viewers that this whole world's ridiculous and I think it's ridiculous. Instead, we're shown a super ridiculous world in hopes that lands that we understand.
I'm about to say it takes itself entirely seriously. Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even though what is going on, even though Dio is shooting lasers out of his eyes and turning people into ice, everybody in that moment is very serious about what's going on.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it so good.
Yeah, that's the humor of that. Araki's attempt with that. I think he had hope. I don't think hope. I think he had a vision for what this was, right? Like when he sat down, he said, I'm going to take this to the next level. I'm going to do what they do, but better than them. I'm going to do it. It's going to be so insane, so ridiculous, and people are going to love it. I think that's part of what this was. Like, he was like, I'll prove that I can do this stupid shit, I can do this, and I can do it just as good, And that's what Phantom Blood really feels like. It feels like Araki just saying, like fuck Fist of the North Star. I can make this.
Make a blue-haired giant buff man.
It's not that hard.
Beat anything that it's his fist. His fist can beat everything. Yeah. Relationship problems, punch it.
Yeah. And I think that even Hamon as a power structure, I mean, it's clear that he was parodying Fist of the North Star in some ways. When you get into part 3 and Star Platinum says, I mean, that is a direct. I mean, he pretty much just lifted that right out of Fist of the North Star, and that makes sense. And that was again, I think it was all intentional. He was like, if they can do it, I'll do it too.
Yep.
Obviously, Jonathan Joestar's design is based on Kenshiro.
He literally looks like Kenshiro. Yeah,
he looks exactly like him.
Yeah. It's not until much later that Araki's style starts to really like seep in, right? So I think that at first it really looks a lot like Hakuto no Ken. Fist of the North Star, and then it slowly becomes more stylish, right? It becomes more artsy. It becomes more focused on modern brands, more.
And there's it's like a distinct swap in part 4 where he almost redesigns all the characters. In particular, Koichi gets a huge, even though this doesn't happen in the anime because they just use his post design, but he fully gets a redesign. He's totally redesigned into a new character, basically, after a certain point in part 4, which
we're not talking about today, but
not part 4. No. And obviously, he wrote it. He's been writing it for 30 years, so obviously his art gets better, and better and better. He's a talented artist, very talented artist.
I don't know if we need to rank the JoJo's parts because I think that all of us have sort of accepted that, like, Phantom Blood in some ways sort of transcends. It's not that it transcends criticism. Certainly it's going to draw criticism. But it's definitely one of those things that, like, you don't watch it and sit there and go like, yes, the art, animation, and music were offbeat here, and the pacing really, it's the series that when you're taking it in, it's a little tough to it's a little tough to kind of gauge it that way. So I don't know if we need to give these 2 parts or 3 parts.
If you don't get that it's brain dead beat 'em up, then I think that there is I think that's more your problem. Than it doesn't even. You don't even need to talk about it too much to be like, okay, this is a ridiculous show.
Mm-hmm. What makes Phantom Blood work so well, and why it's still. I mean, it's like David said. He literally just said, "I enjoyed it." I watched those 10 episodes, and it was I liked it.
I liked it, yeah.
And I think Mikey, even though Mikey did a great job acknowledging sort of what the bumps of JoJo, it's this ridiculous or that ridiculous, it's this funny, but we all have to hand it to, and you guys can say what you want. David Production captured the vision of JoJo's in a way that I never imagined, with the color palettes. The artistry of it, the way that it adapts, it looks just like the manga. I mean, to be honest, it looks lifted right out of the manga pages. The art style simply just adapts what's there, and it's on such a low. If you guys didn't know, JoJo's was made on a very low production budget at first. Not anymore. They have a big production budget now, but the first season had a very low production budget because they didn't have a lot of faith in David Production's ability to create something of quality. And that's where the color changes that happen comes from, because they had a low budget. So that was one of their methods for making the action more intense, or for being able to get rid of the background so that they can make cleaner lines for the animations. There's some history there. So I thought that was super interesting. And it's become a stylistic choice that whoever made that decision in the anime company deserves a lot of props, because I think now we equate that as a JoJo's thing, right? It's a thing that JoJo's has done and will continue to do, which is so cool. It's so cool. But
it's really easy to enjoy. It really is.
Phantom Blood's one of those shows you can turn on episode 1 and you'll be done with it in a hot... those 10 episodes, you can digest them so fast. It is such a quick watch.
I think I binged it in one night.
Yeah, the first 10 are really just such an easy watch. And you just want to know, it's just compelling enough that you just want to know. You just is Jonathan gonna beat this? What the? Jack the Ripper.
Yeah. I think the most compelling part is it's okay, but this episode he killed a dog. What is he gonna do next episode? He's gonna walk up a wall next episode. Okay, what's the next bizarre thing?
You keep asking yourself how can Araki top himself in the next episode? And that's what keeps you coming back and makes Phantom Blood such a piece. Yeah, David.
I just remembered when Jonathan does the spin and he gets the fire on his fist.
Yes,
that shit was hilarious.
Yes.
He was like, "Oh, ice! I got fire!" Right? He just punches right through it.
Yep.
Oh god,
beautiful.
Why not?
I love that. That fight was ridiculous. It was. I think for me, the plot is man, but the animation is so fucking good. It just makes me want to keep watching, no matter how ridiculous it gets.
Yeah. The plot reminds me of a Captain America comic book. It's just very classic good versus evil. Here's this very righteous character. Here's this character that kills dogs, right? And one's a fucked up immortal vampire, and one is the captain of his rugby team in college, right? You know what I mean? Araki was here's these two guys. They represent the absolute evil and the absolute good, and they're gonna fucking fight, and you're gonna enjoy it, okay? And also they've got laser beams and ice breath and breathing magic and fire punches and literally everything.
They're throwing roses.
But yeah, Phantom Blood sets the stage for a series that can only get weirder, and that's exactly why it's so easy.
I think I know what you're gonna say.
You son of a bitch.
Let's talk about part 2.
You guys see what he did there? Hey, was that lame? Yeah. No. That was good.
Kenny hit us with a joke today. Anyone like that joke? Rate the joke in the comments below. 1 to 3.
Hey, get in the comments.
So Kenny, you're right. I was transitioning into the next part. Sorry. But boys, did you have closing thoughts on Phantom Blood? I think that, like David said, the pacing works because of the speed of the manga chapters. The art and animation is so good on such a low budget. It's really easy to just look at and be kind of in awe. Matches the manga to a T. The storyline is honestly meh. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. But that's sort of the flair of JoJo's. It's what makes it JoJo's, right? Like, it's there to be absurdist and fun with characters that we like to and like and enjoy. And then, if you're not enjoying it after part 1, I don't know if I would say you might enjoy the later parts because it just gets crazier and the stories get more succinct is the word I would use. The stories actually, I think the storylines for JoJo's get a little bit cleaner as the show goes on to the where part 5 to me has one of the better.
Using the word storyline, and I just feel like this story is not a line. It's like it's got asymptotes in there. It's like 3 different parabolas on top of each other.
But
we got
the
story.
I guess what I'm saying is by the time you're in part 5 as a concentrated story, which we're not talking about part 5 yet today, but part 5. So if you really didn't enjoy part 1, there is hope that you might enjoy one of the later parts, and that's something I want to give hope to anyone that's trying it because Araki constantly changes his formula in each part, right? Part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, they all function a little bit differently with the same like general idea of like, we're gonna be a meta look at really buff guys beating the shit out of each other. But they, part 4 is a mystery thriller, which is something that's really different, which we're not going to talk about. And part 5 is a completely different conceptual sort of mobster, it's a whole nother look at a shonen manga. Part 3 is literally Monster of the Week. I mean, it's the Ultraman, the Power Rangers style of storytelling, where it's literally like Monster of the Week.
It feels like Dora the Explorer to me.
Like Dora the Explorer, bro. But in part 2 is kind of got its own. And so if you really didn't dig part 1, and I'm happy that David Production released part 1 and 2 as one big thing, because I think if you watch part 2, you're going to see the second side of JoJo's, the second vision of that. Okay, guys, was there any other thoughts on Phantom Blood before we jump into?
As in, like, I think that Phantom Blood, like, I think each one sort of takes its tropes exactly from a particular storyline. I think part 1 really leans into the Dracula, Castlevania style of, hey, we got to go raid this castle and kill this vampire. Like,
yeah, was Castlevania out at this point?
I think it came out mid-'80s.
Yeah, but also
it may as well have been a video game. I mean,
but it's that I'm a big buff guy. I gotta go kill some vampires.
86, a year before JoJo's came out. I bet it had something to do with it for sure.
Yeah,
very much. They have some similarities, some overlap there. And when did Vampire Knight come out? Because I wonder if that's
Oh man, Vampire Knight. And I know this.
David, I'm gonna be honest. I feel for you, man. I don't know why they keep doing this to you.
Oh my god. Okay, so
difficulties.
Yes, we lost Kenny. We lose Kenny sometimes on these podcasts.
Me and Kenny are in the same house.
We try to just talk through it.
Another week of Kenny disconnecting randomly in the middle of the show.
So closing thoughts on Kenny. That was a great closing thought on Phantom Blood. David, Mikey, you guys, this was your first time. Well, sorry, yeah, it's just a great show to talk about. But
it's good.
It's
liked
good.
It. Like part 2 more though.
Mikey, part 1.
I think it's just as you watch each part.
You saw that part where Jonathan stabbed Dio inside his chest, and then there was actually fire at the other end of the sword, and so the fire heated him up, and it let him get out of the ice move that Dio was using on his arm, and then I don't know what happened. They kicked him off the side of the edge, and then Dio shot laser beams trying to kill him with just his head out, and then somehow he lived. Yeah, that show awesome, bro.
That show fucking awesome, bro. Damn on him.
He's shitting on it.
Okay, so let's do it, boys.
It's likable trash, man. It's likable trash.
It's likable.
Battle
Tendency. That's pretty accurate. Okay, so let's jump into part 2. So, Battle Tendency picks up in the first season of the anime, episode 11. This is when Battle Tendency starts. So, if you're trying to jump along, this is technically in season 1, but it's part 2 of the manga. There was a 1 month break between part 1 and 2 before this manga started serialization. So just understand that when you're jumping into it. But part 2 picks up a pretty good amount of time into the future. Kenny, you want to give us the battle tendency breakdown? You got it?
So we are introduced to this guy, and his name is Joseph Joestar.
Joseph, yeah.
Yeah, Joseph Joestar. And each series, obviously, is marked by their JoJo. And Joseph Joestar is the grandson of Jonathan Joestar. And he's sort of this, like, piece of shit kid who, like, does whatever the fuck he wants. And, like, literally, like, gets into a fight with a cop and, like, hits some shit on his eye. And he naturally can use the ripple somewhat, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can use the Hamon naturally somewhat. And you find out slowly that Joseph's dad dies in the war in World War I, I believe, because we're just before World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, this dude that we knew from the first series straight shows up, and guess what? He's a fucking vampire. And then we're like, what? And then they do an archaeological dig, and they find all these dudes, and they start calling them the Pillar Men. And they're not vampires. They're other creatures. They're ancient
Aztecs.
Immortal rock men.
Yeah, they're ancient rock men.
Yeah. And
they accidentally bring them all back to life. And our boy Joseph Joestar and a couple of different dudes like Caesar Zappelli, Baron Zappelli's son or grandson. I don't remember.
I think grandson.
I think it's also grandson. Yeah.
They are set on this quest to defeat these basically gods that exist. And Joseph is, I want to start, Joseph is just totally and absolutely different than what Jonathan was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally like night and day. It's like, oh, here's Joseph Joestar, this weird motherfucker who fires a Tommy gun into a restaurant to kill this vampire and says, I know what you're going to say. And
where did he pull that gun from?
I don't know. He just had a gun.
He just had it on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not with where Jonathan Joestar was just like, I'm going to punch the shit out of you. Joseph Joestar is like, I am not strong. I am very weak. I have to figure out how I can beat you. And he does it intellectually, somewhat. And I would say that Joseph Joestar, in Mikey's analogy, the Tom and Jerry one, he is the most Jerry-esque of any Joestar,
right?
Any JoJo. He's very.
But imagine instead of using like a very direct pot and pan, like it's like, oh, he uses the pot to hit him, or he sets a trap with something that like very clearly makes sense. He's like, you guys never thought of this. I'm gonna use my left brain or something, and it's like, what? He was like, I'm gonna use yo-yos. That's gonna make me win. And it's like,
I've got these clacky balls, and
oh my God. Imagine Jerry setting yo-yos for Tom. Like,
hey, don't shit on the clacky balls. Clacky balls go hard.
Oh, man. Okay, so I think that's a good recap, Kenny. I think that So David and Mikey, I want you guys to take the lead here because I want to hear your opinions. Kenny and I have been fans. We watched this a long time ago. So, what was your first takeaway, Mikey, from knocking out part 2 when you wrapped up Battle Tendency?
Okay. Part 2, I personally liked a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Narmak said, all the chapters in the Joestar universe is S tier. They're all the you can't. They're not really one's better than the other. But I did kind of like part 2 a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed Joseph Joestar as a character. He really leaned into the ridiculousness inside of this universe.
Yeah.
So we have and I thought that when they were doing like the final battles, the final battle with the Pillar Men or whatever, it was kind of hype. I was a lot more hyped to see my dude Joseph Joestar fight CHORES or whoever in AC/DC than I was to see Jonathan, because we really got to meet these guys a long time ago, and we got to see how strong they were, and then we saw Jonathan train for a while, and we kind of got that training arc trope, and then we got to see how far he really came along. Whereas in Jonathan's case, it kind of just like there was some training going on, but it was like he was always low key on par with Dio. Like he was always super, super, super strong. But we got to really see. There was that episode where he was like climbing up the pillar with his fingers or something. The water pillar.
Yeah.
So the JoJo's has this trope, I guess, where anytime a hero is going to die, they spend like half an episode on their backstory, and it was funny just to see like at the beginning of the episode where the Zeppeli, the Zeppeli dies. It like started out with like Lisa was like, "No, JoJo, you don't understand his past." I was like, okay. Zeppeli's about to die. Zeppeli's about to die. The second Zeppeli dying on a.
They do the whole like monk thing with Baron, right? Before he dies, right?
Yeah.
They do the whole like,
in part one.
Yeah, they did do that.
Right. Every time someone's gonna die, it's like, oh, let's get a whole backstory for them, just for them to die. I did feel a lot more connected to this Zeppeli than Baron Zeppeli, I will say.
Yeah, we had Caesar a much longer time.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Caesar's death was much more emotional.
It was, but then like so they all like like the hero, Lisa and what's his face, Joseph, like they're crying about it for like a whole episode, and then the next episode it was like, okay, let's go back to killing cars and AC/DC and Wham! Like it's like they completely unfazed with like their best friend and student just got mutilated. But
they said it all out. They got it all out.
Yeah. They cried it all out. They had a whole like almost funeral service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, definitely it continued this idea of every episode they're trying to how ridiculous are we gonna get next?
Mm-hmm.
What are we gonna do? Is he gonna pull out a Tommy gun? Is he gonna do the thing where he runs? Is he gonna use yo-yos?
That is one of Joseph's classic moves. I'm just gonna run away. Bye, peace.
Run away.
See you guys next time.
Yeah. I like Battle Tendency much more than Phantom Blood. I think Joseph was Joseph was like an actual character compared to Jonathan. Jonathan was just like a typical like Golden Age comic books, like Boy Scout. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just he's doing the right things because they're right. But with Joseph, I felt like there was like a lot more actual character behind him, a lot more motivation to do what he was trying to do, and because at the end of the day, he was just trying to protect his grandma. Fuck, I can't remember what was the Pillarmen were trying to take over the world, right?
Essentially, yeah.
Pillarmen.
They put that ring in his chest, and he's like,
Pillarmen wanted they wanted to become the perfect life
gods.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I felt like the plot of Battle Tendency was just better overall. I was just much more engaged, and I was surprised that there was no Dio, but I was kind of happy that there was no Dio, just because I knew he would come back later. So I was kind of seeing what would happen in the second part. So that was kind of it was assuring to see like a new antagonist.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
And I think one thing. So just to echo what Mikey was saying about the last part of part 2 being hype. That motherfucker was on a rock in the middle of the ocean, or he was on a volcano. Volcano erupted.
Right.
In the sky.
Right.
He's like out of the atmosphere. He's like stratosphere, I don't know, he's high.
Right.
And he falls all the way back down to Earth. And he's fine.
He's fine.
That shit was crazy.
And he only had one arm at that point. Like he had one hand.
He had one arm.
Joseph was like, Cars, I know what you're about to say, like flying into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, he doesn't know what he's about to say. No
That's
way.
That's how you know. He's got the one up on him.
Part 2 was when the bizarreness. I didn't really feel like any like bizarre stuff from part 1, but part 2, I was like, this shit's getting so weird because he's like, you know what? Like, I don't know how to beat him. Wait, I have an idea. Let's drive him into a volcano. It's like, what?
You're like,
oh my god,
classic Joseph Joestar.
And then Cars showed up. He was like, I knew you were gonna try to get me into the volcano. Like, Cars, how did you know? How did you know? How was that the logical steps that you made?
Oh yeah, I really like part 2.
Yeah, so I think that what happens with part 2, and you guys kind of echoed this, is that part 2 takes the absurdity of part 1 and puts it into a much more like palatable story, right? There's more happening with the characters and the plotting that actually makes you go, that's kind of an interesting concept, or that's kind of right? So I mean, and yes, it's still bizarre. I mean, Nazis are involved, ancient stone men are involved. They fucking fight on top of horses in a chariot style race. I mean, yeah, like that shit was hot. That shit was hot, boys. That shit was hot. You know, these are ancient rock beings that want to take over the world and be gods.
I think the tree beings at some point too. There's supposed to be trees and they're supposed to be rocks.
They are, and they're sentient. And Joseph is the wildest protagonist, right? Like, when you sit down to go, like, who is going to be a good protagonist to exist in this world? Rocky just nailed it. He said, I've got it. He's got to be arrogant. He's got to be eccentric. He's got to be a little bit of an asshole. He's got to have a little bit of this flair and this battle style that makes him interesting and fun. But also someone who's a bit of a wimp, a bit of a runaway, a bit of a, you know, he kind of fights for his own reasons and does things his way all the way through. And I think that's what makes him so likable in part 2, because you're like, wow, like he's kind of an asshole, but I kind of like him, you know? He's kind of got that lovable asshole deal going on, and he's still very proud of himself, like proud of his team. He's very thoughtful when he works together.
At his core, he still is a Joestar, so he's still this very righteous man. He just expresses it in different ways.
He's just the nastiest Joestar. You know, he's a little nasty.
Right.
That's what makes Joseph what Joseph, right? And so some of the little things about Battle Tendency, right? So they adapt about 69 chapters into 16 episodes, which is the exact same pacing as part 1. So it's about 4 to 5 chapters an episode, and it doesn't feel. At least for you guys didn't touch on this. To me, it doesn't feel fast. It feels comfortable.
Pacing was also well done.
Yeah, it feels very much like the show is moving at the right at the right beat. It moves very strong, and you've got, in my opinion, one of the best like auxiliary characters of any Joestar squad, which is Stroheim. I think Stroheim is the funniest fucker, dude. I mean, just the best, like
German engineering.
Y'all deserve, like, if you don't mess with Stroheim, dude, like that man goes hard. But I think the show does a great job. It does a great job because, like, it also sets up like how powerful the Pillarmen are right from the start. You get the first fight with Santana, right, and you feel there's some friction and there's some weight there. You're like, Joseph might not be able to beat these guys, right? There's some actual storytelling that just didn't really exist in part 1. And Araki has fun with that still. He lets you kind of breathe in there. And he still doesn't introduce, stands don't exist till part 3. So they're still fighting. They're really just martial artists at this point. Martial artists with sort of a super, Haman is used pretty excessively in this arc.
Right. They have ki. They do have ki.
They have that from pretty much day 1 in Battle Tendency, which they didn't have at the beginning of Phantom Blood. So that's a big part of it as well. But it's truly, and the style's not different. So the art and animation, since it was all bundled as one big season, it really looks just like part 1 did and feels just like it. They keep that stylistic similarity. So Araki wrote these back to back, so it's not unexpected that Battle Tendency is going to have that same style for the most part. They're pretty stylistically similar. He does get a little bit further away from like the Fist of North Star, and he starts to add sort of these like eccentric outfits. it's almost like Araki sat down and he was like, all the people are drawing like girls in these ridiculous outfits, so I'm going to draw my buff guys in skimpy, dick bulging, like everything possible. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of my favorite parts is like part 2, you know, he's just like sticking them in like skin tight shirts, just covering their male nipples and their bulges. Like,
I love Caesar's design.
Yeah,
Caesar's
design all of it is just such
I have strong desires to touch their muscles.
Yes, dude. Like, Araki just doesn't hesitate to finally kind of embrace Battle Tendency. He embraces his personal style. It's no longer a photocopy of Fist of the North Star. It is Araki, right?
Original.
Like, it is original. It is based in the styles and the things that he likes. And that's why you also get the main antagonists, and this starts sort of a ripple effect. Ha ha ha. But the main antagonists are all named after rock bands. Or not, it's all bands, right? Or is some songs?
Yeah, Cars, AC/DC, and Wham.
Yeah, AC/DC, Wham, Cars, and Santana are all classic rock bands.
Is Santana the first one that gets...
Yeah. Santana's the first one that they beat.
So it's crazy that that's Araki, right? That's like his... He said he loved listening to that music when he would draw, and so it invaded his thing. And it's funny because they're all rock bands, and they're all rock. They're pillar men. They're rock men. It was a pretty like a little bit of a nod, right, to himself. Right. And I think that that really started to peer through in Battle Tendency.
And to what, I mean, David said it earlier, that really did, the original villains was a lot more exciting than, because Dio is just like that classic Dracula vampire. I mean, of course, he's hardly a vampire still. I mean, I don't know how you justify that he was a vampire. But he did sort of just fill this very plain and dry villain. But these new villains, I'm like, okay, I've never seen pillar men that can move their shapes and sizes, and their powers. Everyone's power is slightly unclear. We don't know what everyone can really do.
That's sort of the whole point, I think.
Right.
But it was neat. It was a lot more neat to watch the Pillarmen be battling than Dio. I think.
Yes.
And I'd like to talk on the pacing. Is that like imagine the Cell games. Remember how Cell was like, "You guys can be stronger. Okay, go train and come back." And instead of that, we kill Santana right whenever we meet the Pillarmen. Then, in the middle of your training, another Pillarman invades. And they have to fight him. And then finally we get to the fight with Wham and finally Cars. And you're like, I think that the story makes itself go forward so naturally that it doesn't happen in a lot of other shonen mangas. They're like, okay, we got to go train and then we'll be back later to go ahead and fight this big villain. It's like, no, we got to go. Like, you're going to die. There's a ring in your chest. And the Pillarmen don't all think the same thing. Like, they aren't going to just let you go and train. We're going to show up at your training and kill your teachers and like, and you're like, what? Like,
all the bad guys themselves were in conflict a little bit.
Yeah, I think with the rings that they put on. So, listeners, they put they put 2 rings on Joseph's. I think one's on his like throat and one's on his like a major artery on his heart.
Yeah,
and they basically give him 30 days, I think, to fight them, and that's the only way that he can get the antidote. Get those rings dissolved. So right off the bat, we're kind of given like a goal for Joseph. Okay, I have to beat these guys in this amount of time. I'm weak right now, so let's start training. And yeah, I mean I agree with Kenny. It was everything that happened didn't feel like calculated. Just like very fluid, very natural. Them interrupting like Joseph and Caesar as they're training their Hamon and getting better with the control.
It was an ad-lib.
It's an
ad-lib. They just ad-libbing out here. They're like, you know what would make this interesting?
There's no formula. They're just
Jesus.
They're just going for it.
Yeah, but in a way, using those battles as like a training exercise. Right. So it was, the pacing was done well in part 2 as well.
Do you remember the 2 like other trainer characters?
the two like monk guys.
Oh yeah. They were with Lisa.
Yeah, those characters are strange.
They're strange.
That's my only comment.
I didn't notice this at the time, but like shortly after, I was like, wait, Lisa, because her name's Elizabeth, and then JoJo with all of the Josephs or Jonathan, because she's a Joestar. I was like, oh, that's pretty clever.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Joestar.
How about Smokey Brown being a carryover into Stardust? Did you guys notice that?
Yeah.
He's Mayor
Wait, is he mentioned?
He's mentioned just briefly. It's like a back. It's like a.
You're pretty sure it's the next couple episodes. Yeah.
Oh, David, you might not have seen it yet. Dang. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I spoiled myself earlier because I was reading Wikipedia articles.
It doesn't impact the story. It's just like a cameo. Yeah.
Oh.
But okay, so I think that we, as much as like we spent a little bit less time on Battle Tendency, even though it was a little longer, I think that we hit all the major components of it, right? Like, to me, Battle Tendency is the perfect way to cap off the first season of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, right? Like, David Production made a really good choice, not because they easily could have done a 13-episode season and just done Phantom Blood, right? But I think making the choice from the go to put Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency into one 26-episode, 2-core season, that was the move, right? That was a way to get people invested in this new series its old series, in this revival of JoJo's, because part 2 to me is the moment where Araki was really like putting in the work to make us invest into this universe of characters, right? We really want to know what else could happen now. As much as like it didn't have Dio, it didn't have that component, the rest of the world started to get really fleshed out. We learned Hamon more. We learned more about the way powers and characters exist. The world got bigger than just London. Now we were in America. This was the
and then South America and Italy.
Yeah, I forgot. There's some jumping, and Mexico, I think, is where they find Santana. But it starts in America. The world gets much bigger. There's more going on, and it gets you invested in this universe. And I think that David Productions choosing to put this all at once out was the smartest thing that they could have done to get a new generation interested in JoJo's. Part 2, to me, is what gets you going, wow, I think this is something different. This is going to be something different.
They left it on that beautiful post-credit scene where we see that young Japanese boy in jail, man.
I know.
And you're like, I know what's coming. This is the part that everybody talks about.
Man, I can't imagine like watching that.
Oh, what, Mikey?
They understood that STARDUST CRUSADERS is the most iconic part. So they really they Avengers Endgame or whatever, they gave us an after credit scene and was like, what's cooking up? Y'all know what's coming next.
But yeah, and what's crazy is they actually took a pretty long production break after part 2 before part 3 aired. It was, I think, a 2 or 3 year production break between those 2 seasons.
Wow.
Not the longest. The longest is between...
The longest production break was between 4 and 5, yeah. That's the longest production break. But, geez, that was like... I think that was a solid 3 years, Kenny, between those 2. Yep. Which is ridiculous. Yeah.
Were they like animating that whole time, or were they just...
Nope.
Oh, they were doing nothing that whole time.
Yeah, it's production break / making sure everything's in order to start the next part. Just like right now, we got part 5... like a year ago, Kenny? A little over a year ago?
Ended in 2019.
And there's still they haven't even talked about if part 6 is going to get it. There's no announcement. It's going to come. Honest. It's going to happen.
At this point, it's coming, right?
Yeah, it's going to happen. So I think that's a great wrap-up of part 2, right? So if you're not a fan of JoJo's and this is your first time hearing about it, it's us talking about it. Yeah, we might have spoiled a little bit for you, but I think that we have not spoiled the meat of what was there. So go give the first season a watch those 26 episodes, and if at the end of Battle Tendency you still aren't vibing, then this might really not be the show for you, right? Like, this might not be your style of anime, but it hits such a specific genre and does it so well that if you are a fan of any action shonen, JoJo's is going to be right up your alley. I mean, it epitomizes action shonen, and you got to remember that it predates most of what you're seeing now. So some of the tropes you see played out in JoJo's are that you might have seen in things like Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, Black, Black Clover, all this other stuff, they are stealing it from JoJo's, not the other way around, right? JoJo's didn't come second. It predates, but JoJo's intentionally sucks from shows like Fist of the North Star and Dragon Ball as sort of a meta commentary on those shows. So that's what you get out of part 1 and 2. And genuinely, I think, at least from my perspective, you guys can. I think that the first season is I think it sets a bar for action shonen that is still like waiting to be crossed again, right? Like, I don't know if I think aside from maybe My Hero Academia, when it comes to the quality of the production, there's not really much higher you can get. Like, David Productions set a bar for like what action shonen can look like as a quality piece. Right. So
as a seasonal experience too.
As a season, and something that comes out not all constantly, but it's coming out every year or two, right? You know, we're getting new episodes very irregularly, and they're doing it in big bursts of quality storytelling, and they're able to really take their time on how to pace it and how to spread it out so that you're enjoying the content through and through and still adapting it very faithfully from the manga. Such a great standard to have been set by this new age version of JoJo's. It's letting all of us enjoy a story that was told long before we were born. I can't say that enough. Like, we're finally getting to enjoy something that was told way before we were born, and now we're enjoying it in this medium and really getting the shit kicked out of us, I think, is what I'd like to say. Let's give them a tease, though, boys. Now, David, Mikey, you guys have both watched a little bit of part 3.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
And our boy...
So there's 48 episodes, I think, of part 3.
We won't spoil it too much. Yeah, David, 48. Yeah. Go on.
I was going to say, so there's 48 episodes of part 3. I've only seen, I think, the first. I'm on episode 22 or 23.
Yeah.
So I'm about halfway through part 3.
I think Mikey's on like 26. So he's only a little ahead.
So we're both around halfway through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it adapts a much longer story. Stardust Crusaders was 152 chapters long, so almost double the size of the first 2 parts. So it's a much, much longer experience. And so they've both seen about half. So, Mikey, first, don't spoil it too much, but first impressions, what do you think? Part 3, right. Why is it the best, first impressions?
We can't say it. They're all great. Every JoJo's is great, Jerry.
Why is it the most popular? Right. What makes
Okay. So, I think that I would compare JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to it's like the anime Fast and the Furious. Okay, there's a bunch of movies. They're all exactly what you're gonna get whenever you're walking into it. It's called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and part 3. So it's just, popcorn action flicks, basically. But this is the anime version. But part 3 is that point in the Fast and Furious franchise where they forget that they were driving cars. They forget that it was about speed, that it was about racing, and they're now halfway superheroes, and the characters are still there that you know and love, but they're like also like CIA agents and like FBI people, and it really has it is not ground level criminal work anymore. This is some major league magical stuff going on in part 3. He kept turning up that notch. It feels like a different show. It really feels like he chose a new style of show to go for, but we still have those central elements, and Joseph continues on.
Yeah.
Yes.
As a main character, very truly.
Right.
Yes.
Joseph. I'm at the purple.
Just like how, The Rock is still in these movies, and he was in the second or third one, but now he's a superhero or something.
Vin Diesel has made it, guys. No, I'm joking.
Right. Rest in peace, Paul Walker. But
yes. David, did you have any first thoughts on part 3? Again, not too much detail, but
so yeah, going into it, I was very hyped because I knew what I was about to get myself into. And then after actually watching it, I could not have expected what I would stumble upon with Everything's a stand.
Everything's
basically.
a stand. Grab your butthole because everything's a stand.
And I know as I get further into the series, that becomes less of a meme and more real. Everything really is. But I think the whole just concept of stands is just so fucking cool. It's kind of like Hammond, but everyone has their own version of it, and then he just like drew what that Hammond would look like if it was personified as a being,
right?
And so,
like, remember, like Caesar could like throw like water discs, which was like, only he could do that. That was his thing or whatever. So he just took that a step farther.
Right, exactly. And I know there's probably more of a reason as to why stands exist, or why they are what they are.
You don't gotta worry
later
about
on in the series.
You don't gotta worry about the reason.
It's actually retconned into part 3. So there's a small portion where they talk about it, and it didn't actually exist whenever he first wrote it. But in later parts, he writes it like that, and so
you just need to worry about how awesome they are.
Stands get a backstory. Stands get a backstory in part 4. That's when he actually wrote it. But the anime actually added a portion of that story into part 3, so that you get a little sneak preview of like what that is. So, and I didn't even realize that. I thought it was all in part 4, and I thought it was all a flashback. But there is a flashback in part 4 with a little bit of context as well. That's fine, Mikey. We're gonna keep going through you going to the bathroom, my man.
I've been drinking this jug of water.
He's a jug guy. He's a jug guy.
He's a jug guy.
I'm a jug guy now. But
not to get too far into part 3, I am loving it so far. I'm loving it much more than 1 and 2. I'm sure that's probably safe to say a universal opinion. If we're just talking about the first 3 parts of JoJo.
Yep. And I think that Mikey hit on... Mikey said something earlier. He said it feels like an entirely different anime. And I think that that's something that if you aren't a fan of JoJo's, you didn't like part 1 and 2, you couldn't stomach it, it wasn't your style, I think jumping in at part 3 is not a completely inappropriate thing to do. I think you could just watch part 3 as a standalone experience and enjoy it a lot. Again, we're not going to deep dive part 3 right now, but it is worth giving it a shot because part 3 is just so much different. It's such a different experience. So definitely consider that. If part 1 and 2 really didn't work for you, go back and try part 3 or even part 4 or part 5, because all of these shows, all of these parts really do exist sort of as they're in the same universe, but they also sort of exist in their own experience. So it's worth giving that a shot.
Honestly, if you don't like JoJo's, you probably have shit taste in anime. So I'm just put that out there. If you don't like it, then
I think the one thing that's tough is like the only people that I can imagine aren't going to enjoy a show like this is someone who just does not vibe with the shonen. If you don't like any shonen, you're probably not going to like JoJo's. Like that. I mean, just to put it frankly, like if shonen anime is not your thing, then JoJo's won't work for you. It is such a meta commentary. I keep saying that, but it's like it is such a deep look at what shonen is as a genre, and it likes to play with that genre so much that if you don't like shonen, you're not going to enjoy to watch the meta version of it. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to be your thing. But if you like shonen in any capacity and you look at it through that lens of this is both a commentary as well as its own story, its own experience, you're going to enjoy it a lot more, and you're going to just go, "Wow, okay, Araki was getting at something here." But yeah, I think that's it, guys, for part 3, and I think we'll wrap. I think we'll start heading towards the end here, guys.
Wait, Kenny, you're bald?
I'm bald? What happened? Yeah, I shaved my head. I mean, I haven't been to work in a long time, so I was like, fuck it. I just wanted to... My hair was getting really long. I really can't go to a barber, so I just shaved it all off.
Jerry, join the group. Join the crowd, Jerry.
Yeah, come on. So. This is the Bald Man Podcast.
The Bald Man, the Uncensored Bald Man Podcast. Mikey, gotta go. I think the only other thing I want to mention about JoJo's is the amount of just artistry that really does go into it. If you've never watched Araki draw, you can find it on YouTube. He bases almost all of the poses that are like sort of the iconic part of JoJo's off of like classical sculptures, old paintings. These are not things. He's actually drawing inspiration from some of the most like heralded art sort of in the world. And that's where he originally, when he sat down to draw part 1, that's where all of this was coming from. He was actually looking at sculptures. He has books of sculptures that he would take and he would use them as sort of the base when he would try to draw some of these poses, because he wanted them to look godlike, right? Like deity-like. Or like, yeah, there was an intention behind that, and that's such a cool thing. Araki's one of the few manga artists to ever be featured in the Louvre, which is a huge accomplishment. His art is considered that high of quality and caliber that it is truly like, again, it's considered like international art.
It's in museums.
Yeah, it's literally in museums. Yeah, like that's crazy to think.
It's so odd to see like the beginning of his art and what he's grown to at this point, because like some of the things he draws in his latest stuff is just unbelievable. You know, some of the ways he used colors and styles in his characters is just crazy.
It blows my mind just to look at it and just be like, wow, like that. It's not even like, it just does. It feels, for something that was created every week, that he was making this constantly. Essentially like in a vacuum of just having to create and create and create and create, which usually yields itself to lower quality. When you look at most manga that are created weekly, the quality of artwork is really not their focus, right? It's about pumping it out. Some artists are very, very talented. You get some really good stuff. Tite Kubo is a great example as well. But Araki is truly the pinnacle. There's no one that...
Or I like Yusuke Murata a lot as well.
Yusuke is... Oh my god. Yusuke Murata is the next Araki. You know, he's... Woof. That'll be another episode, Kenny. We'll talk Yusuke. But yeah, what a solid experience. JoJo's part 1 and 2. Mikey, thanks for talking to us tonight about this. You're about to have to sit through your brother's favorite part of the podcast. It's something we called Shonen Anime Unraveled. Kenny is going to talk at us about a shonen anime for a little bit here. And tell us.
Well, guys, as you know,
Mikey?
every week, shonen anime and shonen manga, they're just focused on serialization, and sometimes the story just falls through the cracks, and they just unravel in glorious, glorious fashion. And this week we're going to talk about Bleach. And Bleach is a great show, so well drawn. I love all the characters, but God, does it make no fucking sense. Okay?
Mikey, you love Bleach?
Huh? Mikey loves Bleach. He's a huge Bleach fan. Bleach.
I like
the Bound arc. Do you like the Bound arc?
I don't even know what that when it got real weird. It got real weird after he beat Aizen. That should have been the end of it. I liked when he beat Aizen though.
Yeah.
So, he beat Aizen.
Here's what happens, okay? A guy named Ichigo, who's like a good guy, and he likes his friends, and he protects people. And then there are Soul Reapers, and they kill evil spirits. Spirits, after a certain time, if they don't ascend to like heaven, which is called the Soul Society, then they turn into these hollows, and they have to be killed. But then they go to Soul Society, which is like kind of heaven. And they fight there, and then, now there's a hollow place, and I guess spirits can be born as hollows as well. And then there's a guy who controls them with this ball, and then we beat that guy, and everybody loses their powers. But guess what? There are these other guys named Quincy's that we absolutely have learned nothing about throughout the whole show. And Ichigo, he's also a Quincy. And so then he uses Quincy powers to reawaken his Soul Reaper powers that he lost. And then you're not going to fucking believe this. There's a whole Quincy world, and it exists within Soul Society. And so then in the final arc, the castle for the Quincy's exists on top of Soul Society. Literally. It crushes Soul Society. And then Ichigo whacks this ancient Quincy guy who's also his grandfather with his big sword. And shonen anime sometimes just got to come to an end.
10 out of 10. Ichigo whacks people with a big sword, dude.
That's why Bleach is the best anime of all time.
That's why Bleach is fucking awesome, you dumb shit. God damn it, Kenny. No, yes, Bleach is quite the masterpiece, but also a piece of shit. Bleach is one of those animes we all have to accept that, Kubo, he should have ended it.
Man, but some of them characters, fuck, they look good.
They look good.
Orihime, big old titties. Big old titties.
Big old titties. That was one of his favorite things. Big old titties.
Yo, he looked.
Yorichi, the cat girl.
Oh,
big old
titties.
What
was the shark girl name? Harabelle.
Rangiku.
Not enough. You remember we were just talking about JoJo's. Not enough buff men. I'm gonna be honest. There's only Chad. He was quite a Chad.
I do think there's a couple sexy men though, like Grimmjow man. And
yeah, they draw Grimmjow pretty.
Ichigo. If you get to the last
Okiura. Okiura pretty good.
Okiura is like the he's like the goth boy. He's like the goth boy.
E-boy. He's E-boy.
Like when we were kids, we were like attracted to like like the girl from Danny Phantom. Like Okiura was like the boy version of the girl from Danny Phantom. Like
Pixie Dream Boy.
Yeah, dude, he was the he's the little vampire boy, the little goth boy that all the little goth girls fell in love with.
Some would say the Vampire Knight.
I don't think anyone would say that. I don't think.
But yes, boys, that is it. We have now wrapped up another episode of the Uncensored Anime Podcast. Mm-hmm. Mikey, again, we're so grateful to have had you on. Hopefully we get you back on.
Yeah, it's been a lot of money on it. So.
Y'all are still going to do all my chores this week?
Oh, was that... was that the agreement?
Aw, man.
No, we're so grateful to have you on to talk JoJo's. What a great time. I hope that those of you listening both learned a little history about JoJo's, maybe had a new excitement for what's to come in JoJo's, because part 6 will come. It'll happen. Don't trust the hype, but go watch JoJo's. It's the best. It's such a wonderful experience. Don't get behind the curve. So go watch it now. We had to dedicate a whole episode to this, and we'll probably come back when David and Mikey finish part 3. Maybe when they finish part 4 too. Maybe we'll do an episode, do part 3 and 4 together. Maybe we'll do part 5 episode. Part 3 might need its own full 2 hours, maybe. But part 4 and 5 might get a combined episode. Who knows? But we got to talk more JoJo's in the future, because it is a show that deserves a little bit of love and a little bit of respect, especially since people have been disrespecting Araki for too long. So we're happy to have brought this to y'all.
Man, who's been disrespecting them, though?
Shueisha, they said, you're not the best of the best. They said, you're not the best, Araki.
Call
That's what they said. They said, you're not the best. But you're right, they've kept him on board for 30
Shueisha.
Shueisha? You're a fool! You're a fool!
What are you doing? What is you doing?
Fix it!
He's got work. He's got art in museums.
Oh my god. But yes.
Does Akira Toriyama got art in museums?
No. Maybe.
Masashi Kishimoto?
Maybe. No. Okay, but yes. Next time, I hope you get excited. David has picked our anime for next week. So we're starting the cycle over. Are you sticking with what you picked? Is it going to be
done by next week?
What are you talking about?
Like available?
We're doing Log Horizon next week, David.
Yeah, the next episode.
We are doing
I was
Log Horizon.
Now, you picked it.
I was thinking of a different one.
Else. Okay, so David has picked our show for our next episode. So we are going to jump back into our cycle of David, Kenny, Jerry to do our next couple episodes. So if you want to tune in next time, we're going to be talking Log Horizon. Hopefully season 1 and 2 together.
Should we do 2? I think we'll be able to fit both of those in one section. Should we do something else? Should we do a movie, or should we do...
For now, we're going to plan... Next week, join us for Log Horizon. We might sneak something special in there, too. So if you want to come back next week, we're talking Log Horizon Season 1 and 2 in preparation of Season 3, which airs next semester, next year. It airs in January. Season 3 comes out next year. So we want to talk about Season 1 and 2, maybe add some hype to the fire for Log Horizon Season 3. If you don't know, it is isekai trash. So if you've never watched Log Horizon, it is just isekai trash. So be prepped if you want to watch it prior to us talking about it next week. Go give it a shot. It's about 50 episodes for both seasons. And we'll be back again talking Log Horizon next week. But again, thank you to anyone who's tuned in. Thank you to anyone who's enjoyed this show. We've had so much fun recording this podcast, and we are excited to keep coming back and talking about anime every week, completely uncensored, unbeholden to the interest of anyone. We are just four this week, usually 3 weebs, talking about anime, breaking it down.
As a weeb.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
we are 3 weebs and a normie.
Fucking normie.
And hopefully we're going to bring more guests, more exciting content. and we're going to keep talking about some of your favorite shows or least favorite shows. So please join us next time, and we'll see you guys all next week. Peace.